Hello, Miss Katie. How are you?
Hi, how are you this afternoon?
I'm good. How about you?
Very, very good. Couldn't pass up the chance to talk a little bit about this
Oh,
late.
hang on. We've got an echo. Give me a second to figure out where it's coming from.
Okay.
I know. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, I think I've solved our problem. Now we can go. All
Well
right,
done.
go ahead.
Couldn't pass up the opportunity just to check in about the situation here and the most recent whirl of political drama around Ryan Walters, particularly. The thing that interests me the most about this situation is how it illustrates the difference between the captured media and the truly independent media. And there's some people out there doing some really good work, which I'd like to highlight. But one of the things that I think is interesting is the lack of critical thinking in the captured media on this situation. And I thought it would be interesting. This is something that I was watching Glenn Beck the other day, and he went through a whiteboard of just the different scenarios surrounding perhaps why President Trump hasn't released all of what people think are the, Epstein files that potentially could be there. And he basically just went through some scenarios, and I thought that is exactly what I'm doing in my head and watching the independent media do with this situation concerning what may or may not have been playing on a TV screen behind the scenes of the State Board of Education. So,
Well,
uh,
I have to say, I'm like super disappointed in the reporting, and I have to say, let's start this out right
okay.
front before we even go into this. So I'm not a Ryan Walters like fan. I mean, you know that I'm the one who's usually going, well, I wish he hadn't said that, or he should have said this, or this is bad, or usually the one doing that. And in this particular instance, I'm not okay with what the media is reporting. I'm not. I'm with Ryan here, actually. And I think the thing that's the most frustrating for me, like I think it is for thinking people, there's
Yes.
no due process here. We're just throwing this dude who has 4 kids under the bus. I mean, we're not even waiting to see what's happening. It's all just naked women and nipples, and we just get, I mean, it's crazy.
Yes. And so I've been covering for the past 2 years now, basically, year and a half, sort of the cycle of these attacks. And I don't believe that it's only on Ryan Walters. I believe it's on anyone, if you look at the history, who's tried to reform education. Um, so watching it, it's really the same people who are weighing in on the narrative, sometimes creating the narrative. This is just the latest chapter. And they put aside all logical thinking, all critical thinking. This one, in so many ways, the narrative that the captured media has put out is so implausible if you stop back for just a minute and say, let's do some critical thinking. Let's think of all the scenarios that could have happened here. And there was absolutely none of that. So I just want to go back and sort of do that and talk about critical thinking in this instance. Oh, thank you. So I put together really behind the scenes all the chatting going on with independent journalists. We were all talking about what maybe happened in this. What are possible scenarios? And I'd like to kind of walk through the four that are most common that I've been watching these independent journalists pick their way through and look for proof of. So the first one is that right here on the screen that Walters accidentally left some kind of inappropriate images or video playing on a TV that's placed near the State Board of Education executive session table. And that's really what the media has run with, that this
Yeah.
was some kind of pornography, that it was video of some form, although some of the depictions sort of think stills run into video, it's hard to say, and that it was placed near and why I say the State Board of Education executive session table is that this is not the main boardroom, okay? So I just want to talk about that for a minute. I don't know, do you want to say something about what you think of this scenario before we go too deeply in this? Uh,
I'll just say this. You never know people. I mean, you might think that you do, but you never know people. But I think the implausibility of somebody playing porn on one of their devices that either was hooked to the TV or accidentally hooked to the TV through Bluetooth is ludicrous in this situation, because you wouldn't. I mean, granted, I do remember. Do you remember during COVID? Who was it? A member of the MSM, the media, who was actually caught pleasuring himself during a Zoom meeting?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yes, I don't remember the name, but I remember.
I don't either. But to say it doesn't happen would be obviously crazy, because we know in that particular case it did. But why would a man with 4 children do something so stupid as to hook up some porn right just like 10 minutes within this weird window that he was going to have an executive session in that room?
Exactly. And that was my first thought when I heard this narrative. It was instant that I was incredibly skeptical because of the setup here. If you haven't been in that room, I just want to describe to you, I have been in that room, not since Superintendent Walters has been in the office, but previous to that, I have been in that room. So the board meets in the main boardroom for most of the agenda. And this time I'm looking at the agenda right now. The first 7 out of 10 items on the agenda, they completed in the main boardroom. And then, as they always do, in very expected fashion, they vote to go into executive session and they go back into this separate boardroom, which is it's called, they say it's Ryan Walters' office. It's actually somewhat of a common space, and it's L-shaped. And he does have his desk and office off of that space. He was completely anticipating and preparing for them to be back into this area for executive session. This is an area that some of his staff would use. That television is placed in a place where it's more of semi-public area. So this is not something playing on Walter's computer. This is not something back behind his desk. It's nothing like that. This is a publicly viewable for anyone who's using this common space. And it is an L-shaped room. So this TV is at sort of the end of one of the ends of the L, and the table where they sit is sort of the other. So I do see how 2 board members could be sitting in the right place where only they could see that screen. So I do see that, but I also can see that if that's where they were sitting, they were a fair distance from the screen that is said to be on the far wall. So I don't know.
Well, and I think that's a good point, because I've been in that room as well. And so I can verify what you're saying.
Right.
I mean, it is an L shaped, and the one table that they had, I was there in the office when Joy was in there, and she had a meeting with me for one time. I don't see how, I mean, you'd have to have pretty good eyesight to be able to see it from that far, I think.
Right. And, for me, I'm over 50. If I'm in a meeting, I have my contacts or glasses keyed to something that's close to me because I'm looking at the documentation or looking at you. If I didn't have multifocal lenses in my eyes right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Exactly.
And I speak for their vision, but for me, I wouldn't have been able to see that screen clearly in meeting mode. But so those are things to think about. I just think knowing that Superintendent Walters, who's been the subject of so much media consternation, knowing that board members, particularly 4 of whom who were recently appointed, are coming back into this space. This is where they discuss in executive session all of the teacher misconduct cases. This is where they discuss anything that involves a specific child. I cannot imagine. For me, scenario 1 is implausible. I'm not saying entirely impossible in this crazy word, but very much implausible. And I mean, there's some great comments here coming from your viewers who are asking some of the very same questions. So I would say that let's set scenario one aside for a minute and let's move on to something more plausible. So
okay, can I ask? Can we answer Shelley's question first?
Sure.
She said that she read earlier, an earlier investigation had cleared the accusation, and that's even up in the air too. I don't even understand that. So Ryan actually came out at his press conference yesterday and said that the sheriff had said that there was essentially no Bluetoothing, is the way I understood it. But then the sheriff said, wait, you can't say anything because I haven't completed my investigation. So do you know anything different?
So I only know from that was such a recent release, what he said about that. So my assumption there is that he was there when they looked into these things. And of course they're saying, turn over all your devices. There's only one device involved here. So I don't really understand that language that is being spewed in the media as though they're trying to get into all of his devices. It makes no sense. But from what he's saying, and as we move into these different scenarios, it starts to piece together. So one thing we do know, an early question among all of us that were questioning, was how is this TV fed? And when we look at scenario two, because that's what we're talking about, there's a possibility, did someone plant or mirror something inappropriate onto this TV screen during the executive session? Because, all things are possible. Let's look at all possibilities. Well, it does seem like from what they've learned that this was cable fed. This was a cable fed TV. Some confirmation of that comes from others who say that TV basically stays on cable news all day. It's just a way for those around to keep an eye, particularly on nationally, what's happening in education. And we do know that TV was on for the entire session. There was no sound going, or at least it wasn't audible sound. It was either turned down so low you couldn't hear it or it was muted, but that it was on Fox News for the entire executive session.
Well, and I'm going to say Chris Van Dehende, who is one of the board members that we talked about, he is quoted in one of the stories, and I actually didn't pull it up. I should have, but he is quoted in one of the stories as saying that television is always on Fox News.
Yes. And so when you look at how the media came, and Kendra Wesson, who was on the State Board of Education, said that's exactly the setup. So she's been in the room many, many, many more times and hours than I could ever be, but she's confirming that. Thank you, Kendra. So Walters is saying it's cable fed. Others who access that room are saying it's always on cable news. We have a board member who, we can't exactly call him a friendly to the current administration, who's saying, yes, it's always on Fox News. The report that came out in the media immediately on non-doc sort of said that board member Becky Carlson objected to what was on the screen, and this whole thing sort of came out during the executive session. That is not what we're hearing from others. So particularly Superintendent Walters is saying he didn't even know about it till the next day. He didn't even know this was a thing. In his statement, he said that she said, "What's on that TV?" And he could have assumed she didn't like it on Fox News. A lot of people don't like Fox News, correct? That it was a distraction. He didn't know, but things were cranking along in their executive session, and he went over and tried to turn it off. Well, the board eats lunch back there. So they finished first, before any of this happened, all of the agenda items under number 8, which is all of the misconduct items, and then they took a break from what is reported and brought in some food. They don't want to eat in front of the whole media. I don't blame them. So some things were moved around in the room when they brought in food, including where the remotes are usually kept on a table. They were serving food, doing those kind of things. Superintendent Walters is reported to have left the table setting and gone to his private office area to meet with the family that would be the next item on the agenda. So they also deal with transfers that are big conflicts. A school district has said, no, you can't transfer. There's something going on there. So he stepped aside to meet particularly with his family before this came up. So when he came back, things are in different places. People are eating, that kind of thing. So this all actually happened when Miss Carlson said, what's on that TV? He looked for the remote. The remote wasn't where it was supposed to be. He got up, he went into wherever the office area, a staff member is reported to have put the remotes there temporarily, came over, turned off the TV and got back to business. Is reporting no idea that anyone thought anything inappropriate was going on.
Well, and I think Roberta wants to make a point here. The TV was on the entire time. They made it sound like it just came on, but it was on all the time. And then too, let me go back here because this is a good point. Have the board members who said they saw it been interviewed? I haven't seen anything from them other than printed quotes, but maybe I've missed the interview. And basically, I mean, you know, why are we getting no interview from them other than just the quotes that have been in the paper?
Well, I will say this. That's one of the big questions. And one of the last slides I have is one of the unanswered questions. So let's get to that one now. That is one of my unanswered questions. It appears that they've gone to just a select, somehow there was a connection with the media. We do not know after they left that meeting where the connection happened, but NonDoc was the one to break that story. And I want to give some applause to our Substack friends, the Ramblings of a Domesticated Warrior, because they really started to look into NonDoc, who calls themselves independent media. And when we look at, you all go to them, I'd love for you to follow Visit and to subscribe to Visit, but I'll pick up Ramblings of a Domesticated Warrior on Substack, because they sort of highlighted, why did this come out in NonDoc? Their funders, as they highlight accurately, NonDoc is under a nonprofit called Sustainable Journalism Foundation, and they're funded heavily by the Richardson family. So that is Paycom. That is the Paycom founder. And if you'll recall, back during COVID, he put out an open letter to the governor wanting all of our businesses to be shut down while his online business thrived, and, you know, sort of saying we're putting the world at risk by not letting people conduct their lives. So that's who that is.
He is not bipartisan in any way, shape, or form.
No. Part of the Giving Pledge group of billionaires that puts a lot of money now into so-called philanthropy, which I call manipulanthropy. The Inasmuch Foundation, the Walton Foundation, the Arnall Foundation, the Chamber of Commerce. These are all progressive money sources that have been delving into public education for years and years and years. Okay, so thank you.
And now journalism, because it's not just them, it's Oklahoma Voice, it's oh gosh, well, I don't know how Frontier is, but there are several new ones, and they've been funded, you know, a lot by the same people.
Right. So now we have these two board members that end up with that as an outlet, and places like the Oklahomans seem to have an inside scoop. I personally reached out to both of those board members, Dethridge and Carlson, and asked for some clarification, asked for them to give any kind of comment, an email interview, an in-person interview. There was nothing. And I also know of other journalists who did the same, and they have not been willing to even give comment to anyone outside this very small circle of outlets.
Well, so why would you not want to, I mean, why would you not want to give, I mean, if you're this upset about it,
correct,
and you want to make sure 9, 5, and 4 have your comments and NonDoc, and I mean, then why is it that you wouldn't give another reporter like you a comment?
That is where some of these narratives start to break down, because we see that it is a captured narrative, or we suspect that it's a captured narrative. Let me say this. Let's move on to, so we've sort of played the scenario that number 2, someone planted something on this TV. That seems unlikely given what we know about the technical setup at the time and the use of the TV historically, that it is not able to be hacked. It is not connected to Wi-Fi. It's on a direct cable input. So I'm going to set that aside for right now. And I will tell you, initially, I thought that might be a possibility. When I first heard this story, I was like, boy, if you wanted to politically hit somebody, it's not that hard with technology now, with things connected. But this one doesn't sound likely. So
it's not for a gag. My youngest son likes to play Kitty City on everybody's televisions just to annoy them. So yes, it can happen.
Yes, it definitely.
But that television has to be accessible to that, though. It has to be Bluetooth accessible in order to make that happen, and that's usually on a Wi-Fi setup.
Right. And I also, thought through the scenario of the hallway right outside where this is where all of the protesters against Ryan Walters sit against the wall. As media, you go right by him into the boardroom. And I thought to myself, his security follows him from that area back to the main boardroom area. Was anyone there to watch that space? Did something happen there? But it seems like, given the technical setup, that's highly unlikely. Okay. So moving on to scenario number 3, could board members Carson and Dethridge have mistaken those images on TV as something being inappropriate, and then media and political opportunists just ran with it? So was this not planned, but it was a misunderstanding that the political apparatus then took and said, we'll use that against him, right? Also, the domesticated warrior, they started thinking about this. And in the same article, they started talking about looking back at the timelines, what was on Fox News at the time, and sort of connecting that. One thing that would fit the description would be tributes to Hulk Hogan, who had just passed. The timing was exact, right? So there were some things. And at first it looked, that's very plausible. Then there was some more digging done by Jason Murphy, the Oklahoma State Capitol, on Substack. And he ended up putting out an article saying, aha, the exact time that this is reported to have happened, and we know it was right after they were eating lunch, and that they were looking at that one transfer issue, that Becky Carson asked for the TV to be, or asked what was on the TV. There was a promo that Jason Murphy found. It did not have a ticker tape of the typical Fox labels at the bottom. It was just promoting that they would be doing an homage to Hulk Hogan. And the pictures from that, which I can share my screen if you want, of that article.
Yeah, let's do that. Hold on.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So this, can you see that?
Nope. Put add to stage.
It says it's sharing.
Hold on. There you go.
Okay. So he, in his article, which was excellent, walks through every ounce of what he's learned about this, even sort of looking at the politics of this and how the media just jumped on it. So this is what was playing earlier in the broadcast, that it was, does this line up? Not exactly in timing. And then later on, there was more to it that showed some things that line up with Mr. Dethridge saying it looked like this person was naked and on a chiropractic table. So if you look at the mat there, the wrestling mat, from a distance, this looks like a could look like a naked blonde on a chiropractic table with someone doing things to them. And I think on his Twitter are the exact shots on Jason Murphy's without the tape on the bottom saying Fox News, showing exactly what they could have been seeing at exactly that time on Fox News that plays almost constantly on that TV and we know was on during the entire executive session. So that really makes scenario 3 a lot more plausible than scenario 1 or 2 in this entire discussion. The thing that I find kind of fascinating, though, is that there's no back off in the media from any of the actors who have weighed in on this, which is interesting because if you go to scenario 4, so let's just say this is scenario 3, it was a misunderstanding and they took advantage of it and they went flying out in the media and honestly said some of the most libelous things that I have heard from attorneys out on social media about Walters, from politicians, from former state house members. I feel like this may be a legal battle that goes on for some time if Walters chooses to take action on that. So Walters came out and he feels that it is a very targeted and purposeful attack. So that goes back to our scenario number 4, which is that the entire narrative was fabricated, just another political attack on Oklahoma's only elected state level public ed official.
Okay, so let me throw this in because Edgar Carroll just said the OHMS update stated the TV is a smart TV, was connected to the state open Wi-Fi connection, had streaming apps, and has only been in his office a month after belonging to a former OSDE employee whose account was still connected to the YouTube streaming app.
Interesting. That's got to be really current update. Okay, but was there, I guess Idra can tell us too, was there evidence, are they releasing evidence that that person utilized that access at the time? Are they saying that someone did pipe something in? I mean, if you could update me on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, also, can I just ask one question?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were a person okay, let me just say it this way. So wasn't there another way to solve that problem? Like, for example, instead of going directly to the media and screaming about nipples and pubic hair, could you not have gone to the superintendent, or even if you didn't trust them, go to OHMS, somebody in OHMS, or go to the sheriffs or whatever, and just say, hey, we need to investigate this because I saw this and this was disturbing and I'm not sure what's going on there. Is there not another way to have accomplished some kind of inquiry other than to go screaming to the media using the terms nipples and pubic hair?
You would think so. Among rational people who are in public service, you would think so. But again, it brings up, how did this even get to the media? So if you understand how the main boardroom, so after this happens, Carson says that she brought it up as though everyone was aware there was something inappropriate supposedly on the TV. That is not the consensus in the room. There were others that had no idea. All they knew is that she had asked what's on the TV and that the TV was shut off. So they go back when they finish with the transfer item. They go back into the main session. And if you see where the media sits in the State Board of Ed room, there's actually most of the media try to get on this. It would be the west wall on these chairs that their knees are almost touching into the backs of the State Board of Ed members. And if you look where the one reporter, female reporter, who is bylined with the editor on the non-doc article, she is very close to Becky Carson. So was it overheard? Was there a discussion? When you watch the camera of them coming back, no one looked distraught. They were laughing at that end of the table. They were talking about some other things when the audio came on. But she was very close. Was it overheard by NONDOC and it grew from there? Did the board members meet together and discuss this together afterward? Because some really good points have been brought up to me by others that if board members met and there was any kind of a quorum to a discussion about what had happened in an executive session, that may be a violation. That may be subject to minutes that need to be released here. So,
well, and I will have to say, if you read some of those, and I read a number of them, but I wasn't going to keep reading them because it was stupid and sensationalist, in my opinion. But I definitely remember thinking, okay, hold on just a second. I've gotten an email from Kendra, and it says, OHMS releases initial details. So if you'll hang on 1 second.
And I want to share this because Roberta Lewis is showing in the comments that the mother who Walter stepped aside to meet with before, who was pleading her transfer case, made a statement. She just made a statement that she did not witness anything inappropriate or out of the ordinary. She said the board was professional. So the timing would be that she was there pleading her case as this was happening, or right there getting ready to plead her case as this was happening. And she did not recognize anything going on according to this statement that Roberta is giving us. Thank you, Roberta. This is still happening real time.
Yeah, so let me pull that down just 1 second and then throw this up, which is the article is OHMS releases initial details into Ryan Walters' investigation. And it says, we're not going to go into all of that. I think we just...
Correct, right there, I think.
Okay, OHMS, along with 3 sheriff's deputies, conducted a visit to the OSDE on the afternoon of July 28th and engaged a third-party vendor to perform a thorough analysis of the TV. The findings from the review include the following. The TV had cable access, streaming services, was connected to an empty DVD player, was equipped with a dipole antenna. Okay. The TV was connected to the state's open Wi-Fi network. A one-time passcode was required to access screencasting to the TV, limiting the number of people with casting ability to the device. Okay. The search history on the TV was empty. The TV previously belonged to a former OSDE employee and was relocated to the superintendent's office earlier this month. The employee's account was still connected to YouTube TV, but under a new IP address. Okay. The superintendent mentioned that on board meeting days, many staff members, board members, and the public could access his office. Due to the hundreds of preloaded apps on the TV, the streaming services were not given a full review as the TV remained on site. It's important to note that OHMS can only review technology at an agency's request unless directed by the legislature, law enforcement, or the court system. Additionally, OHMS cannot review the other state or personal devices without permission from that agency or individuals.
Okay, in that statement, are they saying they clearly reviewed this device?
Correct.
Okay, but they're not saying at that time, they're not looking at the history of that device and the Wi-Fi accesses. Why not?
They said the search history on the TV was empty.
Yeah, I would be remiss to comment on that because I don't understand what they mean by that.
I don't either. I do know what they mean by a one-time passcode was required to access the screencasting. So if somebody wanted to screencast an image to that television, they had to have a passcode to do it.
Correct. That's what I think it means as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So
there you go.
I don't know. That's pretty nebulous in that it's not definitive. If there was something there, would they have told us in this? Will they tell us in this? I don't know. But I will say that Walters unequivocally in his comments felt like it was a political attack. Let's say that. And you start to think about why he would feel this way. And, you know, I've reported for all of his time in office about the previous attacks on that office. Actually, if you go to the next slide, I just want to talk about them briefly. So we want to look at this historically as well, and who some of the players are. So immediately the people that commented on this were people like Kyle Hilbert, our House Speaker, Lonnie Paxton, the Senate Pro Temp, Dick Lowe was in the room but left and quickly commented to the media. Governor Stitt had a comment. So all of these people have been involved in other high-profile conflicts involving the State Board of Ed or Superintendent Walters. So if you remember early on in his administration, the rules, technically OSDE's rules, when they're looking at things like accreditation, certification, that kind of thing, it's how they interpret the law and what they're going to base some of these judgments on. Historically, SDE and the State Board of Education voted on those rules. They voted on those rules and they passed them when they were making changes. Well, the big step in, Gentner Drummond stepped in. The legislature said, no, we have to approve those rules. That was a huge fight. So that was one of those things to sort of stop the agenda. There were 3 different sort of funding gates on all kinds of things. He's holding up Title I funds. That turned out not to be true. The timing was about exactly the same as it's been historically. There was security money for schools that he was holding up, medical money for teacher benefits on maternity and inhalers and things like that. When we got down to it, it was the legislature that was actually holding some of those things up. They hadn't written things appropriately, so those funds couldn't be carried over. There were 2 different instances where the legislature had to go correct those to move those funds through after they had sort of attacked the board and the SDE and the superintendent for being the cause of it. Title IX was a big fight when Walters came out and said, no, schools are not going to obey Biden's Title IX directives to basically allow boys and girls sports in girls' rooms, right? So that was a big one. The union contract removals, that was a big fight where Walters was not going to automatically contract with the same education organizations to give training to school boards and that kind of thing, and teachers. The teacher certification removals is a huge part of the battle that's been going on. And right. We reported on the exact legislators who are commenting here, trying to seek access to the executive sessions where, 9/10 of what they're talking about is teacher certification removals. And there's been a flood of them under this administration at SDE. They have a whole investigative unit now. That never happened. Parents can go through a system where they hop over their district if they're having trouble. So that has been a major thing. They spent a lot of 2024 sort of crashing these board meetings. And of course, we had Gentner Drummond weighing in, saying, yes, they can, after 45 years of another AG's opinion saying, no, they can't, right? So that's all going on. During the removal of a suspension of the certifications of a superintendent out in Shawnee over misconduct. They filed an injunction. Then the last minute, Gentner Drummond removed the board's attorney just hours before a meeting. So these are all sort of attacks coming on. Stitt flipped 3 of the board members overnight. And, we had I had the privilege of taking Kendra Wesson's story and publishing that. We did learn from that story that there are behind the scenes contacts between Stitt's office and board members. There was an offer of another paid position to sort of abandon the agenda of Ryan Walters and President Trump related to Kendra Wesson. And she was very brave coming out and telling about all of it. And we had the whole social studies standard sort of drama that was board members saying that Walters had sort of flipped the standards last minute before they went to the legislature. It turned out that a board member was looking at the wrong thing, was looking at something from public comment, not what was given him as the official copy. On all of these things, we never heard from any of these folks that narrative wasn't true, even when it was disproven. Things about cut scores have come up. If you understand student cut scores, and that's the 4 levels saying a kid is above proficient 2 levels, below proficient 2 levels, well, those change and those are set, and they came after him about that. The truth about that is the control of cut scores is with the Oklahoma Education and Quality and Accountability Agency, another state agency not that long ago created, and it's run by someone named Megan Oftedal, who took a recent trip to Finland with former Representative Mark McBride, who's now a lobbyist. They took a bunch of school superintendents to Finland to study how democratic socialism does education. So this is all very repetitive, creative, but repetitive. So you do sort of see, the media has generated their own attacks over staffing leaving the building, library books, media access to this administration, open records requests. You do see how if you're sitting in a chair as the state superintendent right now, that you would feel that this could be intentional. I'm not saying it was created. I'm saying I see where his perspective is coming from.
Well, and I've talked to Sherry Conley about this, and I agree with what she says. I mean, if we're going to hold teachers and school employees to getting them out if they have been shown to molest a child, or if we're committed to doing a whole investigation on these people over molestation charges, for example, then we have to do that for everybody. I mean, everybody has to be investigated, but I guess this is the point. There is due process under the law. So there are 2 things about this that just absolutely infuriate me. Number 1 is due process. Nobody cared that he had due process. Nobody cared. I mean, let's just spew a bunch of stuff out where 4 children can somehow hear it from somewhere. Let's just do that. Let's make sure we just get the most egregious, salacious garbage, nipples and pubic hair, etc. I'm going to keep saying it because it absolutely infuriates me. Let's make sure that we get that out, push that out before we know anything about anything, right? And if you didn't have an agenda, you would have immediately gone to Ryan and gone, look, bud, there was something on that television. And if you don't want to investigate it, I'm going to have to do something about it. So let's call in somebody and find out what happened here. There would have been no reason for that to have gotten out to the public. There wouldn't have been until the investigation began. And then it would have been, well, something happened on this television. We're investigating it. It happened in my office. I just want to make sure that nothing happened, that, we want to have this investigated fully. So all of this stuff is absolute. I'm going to set my hair on fire so that I can have people watch it burn in the media. I don't see it being helpful in any possible way. And the other problem that I have with it is you've got people who are Christian people who will tell you, oh, I'm a Christian person. I'm a Christian person. And then we're doing this, which is not in any way an appropriate way to handle this. Should it be handled? Yeah. Should it be investigated? Absolutely. This isn't the way, screaming to the media, I saw nipples and pubic hair. I mean, that's not it.
Correct. I'd love to go to look at some of the comments here, because this is really, I'm not trying to tell you what happened or didn't happen. This is a thinking exercise, walking through what is plausible and not. And every thinking person, and particularly journalists, should be doing this before they put anything out. Yet there's no repercussion on that side. People were saying things they cannot prove. And that's the big difference as I've watched this. I haven't published a word on this, but watching, Ramblings of a Domesticated Warrior and watching Jason Murphy's Substack and seeing how they prove everything and bring the facts, that is independent media. The rest.
Well, and certainly, I don't know that you can say they prove it, but it's certainly way more closer to reality than anything that any of the other media has done. Correct. That's just all been salacious nonsense for clicks.
Right. They're bringing backup. They're bringing receipts.
Right.
And they're making a case. This is what's so dangerous. This case to me, I feel like I thought we had already gone over the edge, but I think now we officially have gone over the edge in what is the ideological derangement syndrome. You can see when someone has internalized an ideology or a hatred of a way of thinking, they see something on a screen and their mind translates it to the worst about whoever that is. In this case, that was in the room. And it's very human and it's scary. Look what could happen from this. You could be impeaching the only elected official at that table over someone who has a lens on in public education, has become an ideological cult in many aspects. Ask any good teacher who does not align with the progressive education ideology how hard it is to do their work and to be in that environment, because everything is twisted against those who think otherwise. And I think that's what's happening here. It frightens me that our media is infected with this and they've lost the ability to critically think through these things before they put it on social media, put it into an article, put it on television.
There's no objectivity.
None.
Yes. Absolutely zero. There's been so many comments. I'm not going to be able to get to them because we'll be here all day, but I did want to put up what Sherry said. I now want these people who are trying to smear him for this to join our fight to ensure sexually explicit and violent content is out of and banned from our schools. I also want to see them condemning sexual predators in our schools each time there's a report in the news. And this cannot be overstated. It simply cannot be. We have a kid that you have reported on. We've had done a show about him twice. We have a kid that's out there that's been basically kidnapped from their parents. Where is the media freak out over that? Do you not get enough clicks? Are you scared of DHS? Where's your objectivity there? Where's your lack of objectivity there? Why aren't you screaming, oh my God, child kidnapped from parents? Because it doesn't have nipples and pubic hair in it? I mean, is that really what it is? Because I'm so with Sherry here. So how many people have you reported on that have sexually abused children that not one, where's it been in Nanda? Where's it been in Oklahoma Voice? Where's it been on, well, every once in a while you'll get channel 4, 5, or 9 that'll give a blurb on it. But most of this stuff isn't covered. But yet we're going to go to the proverbial mat. I thought that was kind of funny because we were talking about it being possible wrestlers.
The proverbial chiropractic table.
The whole, even better, Katie, even better. But I mean, in all honesty, this should aggravate every single viewer, and we've got hundreds of people on right now, should aggravate every person watching this video if you don't have the ideological junkyard dog mentality that our public school system has engendered for years. And I've been at the point of that spear numerous times. So I understand that well. I've been, oh my gosh, I can't tell you the number of times during Common Core. Oh, my kid was doxxed one time. They made up a story about that I'd never put my kids in school. All I'm saying is this is an ideological bunch of people, and they bark and bite and everything before they've actually even done any investigation, because it's not about objectivity. It's about pushing a narrative.
It is, and it's about, I was talking to this about another independent journalist the other day. It's about community journalism. So I will tell you, I got a degree in journalism when they would have marked.
Explain that right now. Explain that right now, community journalism.
So the journalism of old is that you go into a story without a preconceived notion, you collect facts, and you report what is true. And as I was saying, when I went to journalism school, if I had turned in a story that looked like I had a preconceived notion or I was trying to push a narrative, it would have come back with red ink all over it. That's when they actually did use red pens, right? And that's been completely unacceptable. Since then, it's been replaced, even at the University of Oklahoma, with community journalism. And I know that because I started getting years ago mailers that said, come to our, of course, they want your alumni funds to come back in, these workshops, these things about community journalism. And what community journalism is, it says that you have some kind of a cause going into every story, right? So if your cause is global warming, you're going to put on your global warming lens when you go to report about whatever it is that you're reporting on. It could be completely unrelated, but it's that you're doing good work for the community by twisting everything back to the narratives, not starting from neutrality, not collecting facts to see what's really going on. There are many, many, many books about this. There are textbooks used in our publicly funded universities in Oklahoma that teach this method of journalism. And so let me give you an idea of an example of how it goes even farther. Not only are they writing what they're originally coming up with a lens of community-based journalism, they will rebuke the other reporting of independent outlets who are telling the truth. And I'm going to go back a couple of years. Do you remember when I broke the story about Western Heights having a drag queen principal elementary school who also had previous child porn charges? And the story went on from there. There was other things. It's Nondoc who broke this story, was the only outlet that person, his name was Shane Mernon, went to for a very sympathetic interview to try and counterpoint my reporting.
Yeah.
So that is community journalism. And the lens is LGBT people are a marginalized group, so they must never do wrong. And if you say otherwise, we're going to twist that lens back on and we're going to refute what you're reporting, even though it was completely factual. So that's how community journalism works. It's really, really dangerous.
So I wanted to back up to another thing that Dorn had said, because this is a big deal. Is there not a protocol for state and federal employees before going to the media? Now, these people are not employees, they're just board members, but you do sign. I mean, you, and I don't know, Kendra will have to get on and say whether this or not, but don't they sign something saying that there are certain parameters for their job or not?
I don't know, Kendra, if you're still on, that was my thinking too. If Kendra could weigh in on that and say, Roberta Lewis says, absolutely they do. And I know there was a big issue when the legislators were trying to get into executive session where we talk about bad teachers, and they thought that they were taking their certifications without justification. I know there was a time when Sarah LePac spoke out publicly at a board meeting and said, these people aren't even willing to sign do not disclose a DNA to come in here. So we have a obligation to not let them in because there's information about children in this. So that's the only thing I've heard publicly stated about that. And Kendra is saying we don't sign anything except our oath of office. Okay.
Yeah, but Sherry makes another point. They were supposed to be in executive session?
Yes.
Just saying, and you're not supposed to say anything about what happened in an executive session, and yet all of a sudden it went to the media. I mean, it's a nitpicky thing, but still in all. All right, you've got another slide in here.
Yes, there were just some remaining questions I had. I mean, what huge question I have is, how did the media become involved? That is very telling in this story. If these board members ran to the media, I have more questions about that. just like you did. Why would you do that? Why would that be your first step? Did they overhear something and then question them in the hallway? That's a huge part of this that hasn't come out. And those two board members haven't been willing to talk to any other outlets beyond the captured ones. Why are they unwilling to talk to any other outlets? Why were the same two board members missing again? So this has been discussed behind the scenes here. I don't know if you remember, but back very early in the year, two board members were missing. And it's very odd that LePac was very consistent attendee. And then Zach Archer, they were both missing for the vote about collecting information about like a student's native language, immigration status, to sort of put supports in place that schools need that information. That was a big blow up between the governor and the state superintendent. And those two people were missing for that vote. So they don't have any accountability on that vote. And right after that, those who voted for it, 3 of them were removed by STIT from the board.
Okay, I'm going to let you do that for 1 second while I go run it and get my cord, because it will throw me off if I lose power. So you keep going. Right. I'll be right back.
Okay, so why were those folks missing again for this controversial? It could totally be coincidence. There could be great reasons. Someone could have a surgery. I would just like to know that. Did multiple board members discuss this incident collectively at any point? Which we have to look at what are the rules of executive session. And I'm talking about outside of executive session. Were they discussing this? And now we actually do know what the Bethany family, I was wanting to know that, and that came in live. Someone shared that. Thank you. That the family from Bethany that was seeking a transfer, that it sounds like it was denied, and they were refuting that they didn't see anything go on that wasn't professional, and they had no knowledge of that, it sounds like, from the statement. And then what contact has the governor's office or any key legislators had with the new board members since their appointments to those seats? That is something that I would very much like to know. We do know from you, Kendra, that there was this STIT's chief of staff reached out and communicated with her in a way that became pretty concerning, that we wrote an article about. And Kendra, it looks like you are sharing, that looks like your oath that you took. So let me read the oath of the state Board of Education members. And it says, I so-and-so do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma, and that I will not knowingly receive directly or indirectly any money or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office. And it goes on a little bit. It doesn't sound like there's any non-disclosure language in that oath. So that's interesting. I wonder if it comes in other form of rules for the board. But no, we've actually covered a lot of the unanswered questions from your viewers in the comments here.
Well, it's just, again, I think the biggest frustration is we don't have a media anymore that is going to present two sides of the issue. It seems like they've all moved to community journalism, and this is what we're going to get. And okay, so Kendra said no.
No, there's nothing in the oath of office, apparently, that it looks like from Kendra that would say that they have to protect this information.
Yeah, and she said OSDE didn't give them anything to sign either.
Well, we may have uncovered kind of a gaping hole, because if we're going to talk about the privacy of information in those sections, we should probably protect it.
Well, that's very interesting, because I thought it was just, because I'm trying to think of the executive session language. I mean, it just says that in the law that you can't, that it's, the information that's in the executive session is bound to stay in the executive session.
Correct. And Kendra's making a very good point that it's covered in the Open Meetings Act. Mm-hmm. So there are standards under law for every state board related to some of these things, it could be in there. But I still would like to know, did they discuss this outside of executive session? Did they discuss it outside the bounds of the State Board of Education meeting?
Well, in some of the, I tried to at least screen a number of different articles because I just wanted to know what people were saying. And there were at least one article that I kind of screened that it looked to me like there was discussion going on between the board members, and certainly more than 3. But I may be wrong. I mean, just what it looked like through some of the articles that I read.
Well, and I guess I'd want to know from your viewers here, we covered these scenarios of all kinds of things that could have happened here. Where they land? What do they feel is the most plausible explanation for this mushroom of political drama? And the other thing is, we didn't really talk about timing. There's a lot of speculation about what comes next politically for Ryan Walters. He's been holding it very close to the vest. We don't know if he plans to run again for state superintendent. We don't know if he's seeking a higher office. We don't know. That makes him politically dangerous, given that he definitely won with a mandate of the people on education reform. I think it was a 13-point swing. That's pretty significant.
Well, Julie says it was political motivation by SIT's board. And Kendra says the awful thing is that people are sharing that Ryan has sent pornographic images to the legislature. But, and that's true. Do you not remember that when he was trying to fight the pornography in the libraries, he actually, this is a good point, Kendra. So he sent several of the pages of a couple of these books to some legislators. And if I may be wrong, but my recollection is that Mark McBride was the one who screamed, he's sending porn through the email. Was I wrong? Am I wrong?
No, I don't think that you're wrong. And he's been extremely vocal on social media about this entire so-called scandal in a way that could be liable.
Oh, Kendra said yes, that I was right. Yes, that it was Mark McBride who was screaming it. I thought it was as well. And so you have to look at this from that lens. That was why it's such a great point from Kendra. So the left wants the failure of family. The left wants the degradation of values. The left wants to wallow in the absolute filth that is pornography, all of those things surrounding that. And so if you try to stop any, like pornography in books, if you try to censor any of that from children who are not developmentally old enough, then what you have is this bizarre satanic pushback from these people. Oh no, I want my child reading pornography. You cannot tell me I cannot let my child read pornography. It's the most disgusting, bizarre thing I have ever seen. But you know that that's true because we saw it when all of the Moms for Liberty and everybody pushed back against those disgusting library books. What happened to the Moms for Liberty? They were vilified. Oh, Moms for Liberty. They came up with all kinds of things. I think, sorry, like it or not, I think this is all satanic. I truly believe this is just satanic. Nobody wants, no really wants the degradation. No good person wants the degradation of a family. Why would you not at least want to, until you've done due diligence, protect the Walters family with 4 small children? Why wouldn't you at least want to do that until you found something that you could go public with? But they don't want to do this. They don't care. They want to trash the family, the traditional family, is anathema to them. They hate it. That's just what the devil hates. Anything good, anything family, anything values oriented. And this just seems like that's what this is. I'm sorry for that
No, it's
rant,
okay. Anything,
but truly.
the protection of innocence is definitely not valued anymore. And when I've heard since this particular latest scandal came up, I've heard that again. Ryan Walters sent pornographic images. And if you remember, this is not an Oklahoma problem. I've seen, and you've seen, many, many videos of parents standing up at local school board meetings and reading the materials that their children bring home from the school library and being stopped because those are, how could you read that? It is a flip of the narrative, as though the parent is being horrible when this thing came home in their child's backpack. So it is no different than them saying that about Walters. And it's really hard to argue when he has, he's uncovered and addressed more of the sexual abuse within public schools than, I would argue, all other state superintendents combined. And it is a massive threat to the education unions, who are the ones who orchestrated the practice of saving the districts when they were all district superintendents, saving the district's reputation by allowing predators to resign and move on. So this is huge. And if you think about the money behind stopping him, you think about the big insurance companies and the unions who have their dues, who are going to have to spend a lot more on insurance, which is their number one product to their members. It is the one benefit that teachers say, the only reason I joined the union is because they got me a liability policy. Well, guess what? That liability policy is going to be a lot more expensive now that we're finally flushing these people out in public education. They do not want this to happen.
Catherine says, I generally don't care for how Ryan handles things, but this just wasn't handled correctly by anybody. And I'm actually inclined to currently believe Walters. I kind of, that's kind of the way I feel as well. This is an interesting comment by Kendra as well. McBride had a line item on the budget for Imagine Math and Imagine Reading, which are both terrible, by the way, a little over $1 million each. Ryan removed those line items from his first budget, and she thinks that's what started the attacks from McBride. And Gracie says, anyone wanting to groom school children in any way is definitely evil, and evil hates good in any form.
Yes, I remember Kendra, when it was the first time we ever had a one-on-one conversation, was when I interviewed her after her removal from the board. What people have to understand about that with McBride, he was heading up the education committee at the time, and we don't buy curriculums on the state level. That is a local control issue. Right. Yet it was like over $1 million, $1.5 million each or something, went in line items. And it was Kendra who caught it. She is the accountant mind, or was on the board, and she caught that. And what I put in the article and did some research was there were 4 lobbyists active for Imagine Learning at the state capitol. That's why those line items are on there. Yet the Oklahoma Ethics Commission does nothing about that.
Well, again, I don't, So Sherry texted me the executive session law, and it's very long. I can't read it all because we'll be here for forever. And I don't have any water. But the point of the matter is, you can go to Title 25, Section 25-307, which covers executive sessions, and you can read that for yourself. And I'm going to put that in here so that people can go look it up.
Yes.
Because it is, oh my goodness, it was long. Okay, and that is the executive session.
What I think in the meantime is interesting about the narrative now from the media on these attacks, they don't even leave themselves room to back out and say, perhaps that's not how it went down. Because there haven't been any repercussions for reporting things that are inaccurate or unproven. So now they just let it spew and don't even bother to leave an out. That includes some of our legislators that are out there saying things They're absolutely not proven.
Well, and here's the worst part about it. So there are two different things, libel and slander.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's happened over the years is the court has made each of them so very hard to prove that basically anybody, I mean, I could call you anything I want. I could cast aspersions on your character. Not that I would, Katie, but I'm just saying anybody can cast aspersions on anybody's character. Anybody could, well, look what they did to me. Look what they did to me after I was fired from the Oklahoma County Election Board. Look what they did to me. My own father called me and said, "Oh my gosh, what did you do?" And I'm like, "What did I do? What do you mean, what did I do? I didn't do anything."
You followed the law, darn you.
I mean, it's absolutely nuts. And that isn't, I mean, it's not funny because, I mean, when your dad's calling you going, "What did you do?" because of something he read in the media. And what am I going to do? I can't sue these people. They know it's impossible to sue them. So they just say whatever they want to say to get clicks or to sell whatever. It's crazy.
Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to see.
Okay.
And that more reason we the people need to take the power back from government and restore it to the people. I completely agree. Mega media doesn't care. They just don't.
Well, I think a bonus in this is that we can keep record of who said what in this, of our elected officials, who came out and said what about this. Similar to comparing what they say on the campaign trail as compared to how they vote. What they came out and quickly knee-jerk said about this, I think they should be accountable for it next year.
Oh, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, absolutely, 100%. All right, well, there's no way they can remove him. There's no proof. It's their word against his. And I'm not sure. I don't know anything about electronics and electronic media. I mean, I know I had to plug my computer in a second ago. There you go. But I mean, the thing of it is I know there are a bunch of people who do know that kind of thing, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I don't really know how you get absolute proof on any of this stuff. I mean,
we'll see if there's no technical proof of this, but that's what critical thinking does. It takes all of these layers of information. What is most plausible that could have happened here? And does the evidence prove or disprove that? And a thinking person, I think, would come out after they see the footage that's been put forward by Jason Murphy. And the timing of that footage is exact to that time in the executive session. And the description of these board members who are saying what they saw and how it could be misconstrued. The pieces definitely fit as to what they thought they saw, and very descriptive about retro and nipples, and it looks like they're on a chiropractic table. When you really look at all those things together, my inclination that this was a misinterpretation of what was on the screen from a distance by two people who are over 50, and from a distance. And then it mushroomed from there. What we need to know is, if that's the case, how did it mushroom from there? Because this is dangerous territory.
Well, and Sherry says, and the fact that he's an elected official makes him fair game, which is ridiculous when it's real slander, because that's the other thing. And thank you for saying that, Sherry. That's the other thing that the courts have found. If you're a public official, and I'm included as a public official because I blabber over the internet. So I'm a public person. So people can say whatever they want to say about me. And I just get to go, "Oh, okay. Well, that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that with everybody," even though it's a big fat lie. So, and it doesn't matter. That's the way the courts have ruled. So how do you even exist? That's the end of free speech. I mean, that's how this kind of thing happens, is that people get scared to say anything because you have these radical leftists who come out, and I'm including what Mark McBride has said, about screaming about he sent porn, over the internet, and that's kind of radical lefty type stuff. And when you do that, all it does is chill free speech, because then people are like, well, if I do that, then this is going to happen to me. So it is literally, to me, a deliberate try to chill free speech and to try to chill certain types of political movement because they don't like that.
It is. And we're coming up on a really important election year. There's huge political consequences to this. The timing, as far as this particular elected official getting ready to announce his intended next move politically. You also layer on the evidence, potential motivation, and it doesn't look good for our legislative leadership nor our entrenched media.
Dark money funded political campaign mailers in the local media have a lot in common. I don't see a chiropractor table, but maybe because he had his arms around someone's neck. I mean, if you look at this picture right there, I mean, it could look something like that. I mean, I don't know. When I saw the footage I can't think of the name of their Substack, dadgummit.
So I'm going to, just for you, I'm going to go to Twitter and pull up the actual images.
Oh, I have them right here.
Oh, you do? Okay, you can.
I have them right here. Hold on a second. I went, because when you said Jason Murphy had them, so I went out to look.
So when you look at the actual images, this is sort of what was playing earlier. If you look at the images of exactly what was happening at that time, and you think about what they said about it being retro, nudity, nipples, chiropractic table, it really starts to fit. So if you may have to click on that and go to his attachments to his original post.
Oh, okay.
There you go. So now scroll down. Okay. So he talks about what was on and looking there, how you could misconstrue some of this as looking like nudity and retro nudity. That starts to look a little different. And the mat, if you think about a chiropractic table just being a white surface, it very well could have been. So I would like to think that this, there you go. This was not completely fabricated and that this is a misunderstanding.
Yeah, because look, I mean, that could look, I mean, that, I've always kind of, wrestling kind of grosses me out because, I'm sorry, because it gets a little, it seems a little intimate to me. And so I'm kind of like, ugh.
There's a lot of shiny skin in wrestling. So.
All right. Well, we'll finish up here because we're a little bit over an hour, but a couple of other questions. The fact that Carson was this was another one. The fact that Carson was absolutely giddy after executive session, talking about cow tipping rather than being traumatized, as stated, speaks volumes. And I do want to explore that just briefly, Katy. Why is it, if she had seen nipples and pubic hair, does she come back into or comes back from executive session and she's laughing and cutting up? And I mean, how traumatized can you be if you're talking about cow tipping?
Well, I would say her comments to those few outlets that have gotten the comments and initially broke the story were that she even said something to the effect of being sort of traumatized as a woman or affected as a woman by that. So the narrative doesn't necessarily fit what you're seeing when they go back into session.
But I think that's something to think about.
Talk about people's motivations, particularly if they've experienced something traumatic. But the other thing is, that just seemed to me, let's just say this is all true. And something got piped in and it really was pornography, which I don't believe based on the evidence that it was. Is a couple seconds of that really traumatic? I don't know. I don't really
Well,
know.
and like you said, we can't, I mean, we can't determine what somebody's motivation is,
That's
nor
right.
what their feelings are when they do.
Correct.
But we absolutely can and should look at their actions, their public actions around that time. And I definitely do believe that we as the public have the ability to ascertain some information ourselves based on those actions. So I do think that's fair. I mean,
Correct.
you can.
I mean, my biggest takeaway and unanswered question is how did this make it to the media? Who took it there? And how did that happen? How did those conversations happen?
If you get an image in your head from Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant of nude women, you have some strange thoughts in your head. I mean,
right.
McBride was concerned about what Ryan Walter sent us, but was okay with that same content being in libraries. And that's, again, that's it. You can't hold those two simultaneously.
No, and I will tell you what those board members are seeing in executive session, not necessarily seeing, but covering and hearing about in executive session when they're talking about, this meeting was no different, the sexual abuse of children within schools. That's the really traumatizing material happening here. And they are. And I'm going to tell you, that's not easy. Kendra Wesson will tell you, I'm sure, when they had to look at those cases month after month, that's disturbing. So if someone came out and they were disturbed, I would understand that. I just don't see it in the footage following the executive session.
That makes you realize maybe we should be questioning wrestling if it can be misconstrued as porn. This is another good one from Sherry. If she was far away, it might be difficult to comprehend what she was looking at. She even said, "What am I looking at?" And she was quoted as saying that in numerous things. But then she also said she saw, am I wrong? Make sure that I'm not saying something wrong. I was under the impression that it was her that said nipples and pubic hair.
Yes, that's the quote I read.
Okay. So if that's correct, but she doesn't know what she's looking at, but then she can see nipples and pubic hair.
I don't know what to tell you. There's a lot of inconsistencies in this. And
roll the video. Let's look at it. And they were just talking about sexual assault and molestation. And so that is kind of another point. Mightn't you be having some kind of thoughts in your head about something that you were just talking about? I mean, it happens to us when we dream all the time. My gosh, I've had conversations with my husband and had a dream about some weird aspect of the conversation that we have. I mean, stuff sticks in your head.
They are, after reporting about a lot of this or interviewing someone who's been a victim, I have a hard time sleeping. I get it.
Well, and then Sherry says, unless she's been a victim. And so, and you don't know about any of this. Awful and good point and that kind of thing. So I think that you and I did what you set out to do in the beginning, which was just whiteboard it. Let's just put some things down here that the media isn't even touching.
Correct.
They're not even
our friends in the independent media, and thank you to the Substack pack.
Absolutely. Ramblings of a Domesticated
Warrior.
Yeah. Yes. So Ramblings of a Domesticated Warrior, and then the state capitol.
State capitol. The Oklahoma State Capitol doing a great job on this.
Absolutely. And I think you need to look those up because at least they have attempted to look at what was going on instead of screaming nipples and pubic hair.
Correct. Yep.
So, Katy, thank you so much for doing this today because I know I know it's just a spur of the moment thing, and we've had hundreds of people on today. So obviously there are people who are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. So obviously there are people who are talking about this, but I definitely think all I think we set out to do here was to make sure that we were at least looking at something other than what was the narrative, right?
Yes. Critical thinking. Let's bring some common sense back to this, and let's demand evidence for the things people are claiming in the media. Because if a narrative is left unchecked and unproven, it can remove someone whose agenda the people voted for, the only person sitting at that table. So whether you're a fan of Ryan Walters or not, whether you voted for him or not, that should scare you, that our legislative leaders and our captured media can team up to take away your vote, because there'll be someone else in that chair. And once you set that precedent, I don't know if we can turn back.
But don't forget, it's not even that precedent. Now, who wants to run and actually do some changes that the left doesn't like?
Correct. Who then is going to be brave and take these things on?
So again, you're going to chill family values. You're going to chill trying to do the right thing. You're going to chill all of that by screaming, about nipples and pubic hair. I mean,
and average Oklahomans like myself and you, we don't think this way. This is bringing something completely foreign into the decision-making room of public education.
Yep.
No, I appreciate it. It's just a thinking exercise, and I appreciate all your viewers because they're helping us think through it.
Well, and then hopefully, they've thought through it as we've kind of walked through it, and then gotten these questions in their head to ask themselves as well. Because if he, of course, do an investigation, but I want to know how many apologies is he going to receive if he's cleared of this?
Exactly as many as he's received when we found out the legislator was the funding issue. When we found out all of those other scandals that I talked about, there's a reason he's still there, because those weren't true. If they had been true, they would have gone after him. But never do they turn around. And I find that so scary. That's another thing that's changed a lot in journalism. Now that we have community journalism, you used to have to retract things. You used to have to publish corrections. What happened to that? There are no checks and balances.
But you would think good legislators need to come to Ryan's defense if they don't believe that it was true. And Julie made the point, I didn't vote for SIT's appointed board members. I voted for Walters. And that's the other thing here is, us getting clobbered by people we don't even elect. It's a bureaucratic, nightmare. I don't know. Okay. There, Sherry is saying that they're all on Channel 9 right now, so people probably want to go over there and listen to what they're saying. I'm going to want to know what they're saying.
Hey, developing story. Keep thinking.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again Friday morning at 9 a.m. But thank you so much for being with us, and share the video with people who might not be thinking as critically as you might want them to. Thanks. Have a great day.